Welcome to another episode of Critical Minds with your host, Rosa. Today, we have special guest, Akela, here joining her to discuss sexual harassment. Hope you enjoy.
Most definitely. Thank you so much, Kayla. So, of course, as Kayla said, we will be discussing the sexual harassment bill that was passed recently in Jamaica. Of course, we need to be informed, of what is happening. And so it is there, it's made available to everybody. Once you log on to Google, you can go ahead and search sexual harassment bill Jamaica, and you will be able to download this wonderful 28 pages PDF document. Let's get right into it.
So, I did take a read of the document, Roseanne,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna tell you. Um, while I understand that this document was put into place because it wanted to make sure that all employers, and employees are protected, as well as students, wards, and all of that, they are protected. I find it very vague.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in my opinion, that nullifies the purpose of what it is set to do.
Okay.
So, to give an example, in part one, I believe, it speaks about what is required for to be done when a sexual harassment policy is put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's very vague in the sense that it says, okay, you need to make it known. Basically, it's saying you need to make it known that sexual harassment is not it's
Allowed.
not permitted in the
Mm-hmm.
institution. And while that is good, the fact is we need to set a standard as to what sexual harassment is, because
Yeah.
what I may deem as sexual harassment may not necessarily be what you deem as sexual harassment, and that can lead things to be oftentimes go unpunished, or
Mm-hmm.
it can lead to persons taking advantage of how vague as this act is.
Okay. Completely understood. Let's see, because I believe I saw a definition though. But before going to that part, I just want the public to be aware. On the final page, or page 26, there is a memorandum of objectives and reasons, and I'll just read a portion of it to the public. Of course, if you want to see the full version, you can go ahead and download it. Again, you can go to Google, Sexual Harassment Bill Jamaica, and you'll be able to download this PDF document. So it says, at present, sexual harassment is not specifically recognized in any existing legislation in Jamaica. However, there is consensus that legislation is necessary to address concerns about sexual harassment, which is employment related, occurring in institutions or arising in the landlord and tenant relationship. This bill outlines the types of conduct which constitute sexual harassment and prohibits certain related conduct. The bill makes further provisions for the making of complaints by persons who are aggrieved by sexual harassment. The complaints are to be heard by the newly created Sexual Harassment Division of the Industrial Disputes Tribunal, which is established under the Labor Relationship and Industrial Disputes Act in cases where the sexual harassment is between an employer and a co-worker or a worker, or may be brought in the resident magistrate's court acting in its civil jurisdiction. Now, as it relates to what you said, Akela, for the definition, because I believe that definitely needs to be stated. I believe I saw it on page one. I'm just
Yes,
gonna
it
quickly,
was.
yeah, there was some definition. In my opinion, I would say the definition is it's okay in my
All right, so let me tell you what sexual advance based on page 2. Sexual advance means any one or more of the following acts, forms of conduct or behavior, namely physical contact of a sexual nature, a demand A, that's A, B, a demand or request for for favors of a sexual nature, C, the making of sexually colored remarks or sexual advances, suggestions, or sexual innuendos. D, the showing of pornography or the display of images or objects of a sexual nature. And E, any other physical, gestural, verbal, non-verbal, or visual conduct of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment means the making of any sexual advance towards a person by another person which is reasonably regarded as unwelcome, offensive, or humiliating by the person towards whom the sexual advance is made. And references to the term sexual harass shall be construed accordingly.
Yeah, because I know I saw that. In my opinion, though, where you said it's vague, I can slightly understand, but sexual harassment to me, I believe they did cover what it is, somebody making an advance to you or showing you things that you are not comfortable with, right? For example, personal experience. There was this young man one time, in a workplace that I was at, and each day, because he was sitting beside me, he would just rub my arm. Each day he continuously rubs my arm to the point where it became uncomfortable, and I expressed that that was uncomfortable. So I in myself would consider that sexual harassment. Can you be more specific as to why you believe this
Right,
explanation
so
is vague?
sexual harassment can also differ based on religion and also culture. So for
Mm-hmm.
us in Jamaica, a lot of things that in other countries would be construed as sexual harassment are just merely swept under the rug, right?
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
using your situation as an example, um, the person sitting beside you rubbing your arm became uncomfortable, but initially you weren't, it
Okay.
was a bother, but
Yeah.
you were okay with it until
Mm-hmm.
it continued to happen and then it became a problem. But
Right.
here's the reality of it: sexual harassment is defined based on how you were raised, because something that I was raised to believe is sexual harassment could possibly just fine in your eyes. And then
Mm.
if the person who the sexual harassment is reporting it to, is being reported to rather, if they are of the same background as the person who is doing the sexual harassment, then it would be unbiased in their favor. Because if I, let's say for example, I am of a Muslim heritage, and a woman is constituted as harassment is forbidden, right? If I report this to someone who is not knowledgeable about Islam or something of that nature, I'm just reporting somebody looking at my hair. That's not going to be a problem for them because they're saying, oh, it's just a hair.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. I love the fact that you brought up culture, because when you actually said that, it did open my eyes. Especially when you get to experience other cultures or work with other cultures, because a Jamaican man is accustomed to, what we would say, "Psst, darling, you're all right, mommy, you look nice," or and
Wagwan,
to
baby.
yeah, and to some of us, like for me, if I'm passing and a gentleman just says beautiful or cherry lips or whatnot, to me it's nothing. You understand? Because as you said, it's a custom. Some people, though, even though we're in the same culture, some people might still find it demeaning or feel as if they're being harassed. It depends on the extent to which the person went
Mhm.
out, with their gestures. But I completely agree, because somebody know, let's say an American or someone from a different culture were to experience that, it would feel some, invasive, or being as if they're being harassed. So I completely understand. I think, though, that is why they're calling on the employers to play their part. And if I'm honest, I would say a lot of employers have been, well, I can only speak from experience. The ones I've experienced so far has been putting out, the effort. Their human resource managers has been, sensitizing their workers as it relates to what sexual harassment is. And you should not be or feel pressured to accept any of this, especially if it is from, a superior, a supervisor, or a manager. What I think though might be bias in this portion is that a few of the articles make mention of co-workers or employees should not
Mhm.
be feeling or getting any harassment from their superiors, such as supervisors, managers, but I'm not seeing where they're saying anything about supervisors who are actually being harassed by employees or subordinates.
Definitely.
So I think it would cover it though, because they wouldn't be able to put everything in a legal document as this, because coworker to coworker, they would fall under that. But there has been specific information towards a supervisor and a manager.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
from my reading, it says if a supervisor or a manager were to harass an employee, it would be placed before a tribunal, right?
Right.
No, if it's placed, and I do agree with you when you say that it's a bit biased because there is no reference made whether to what a supervisor is to do when they are in that situation, because while they may be the superior, they're still human
Yep.
and things still can happen to them, and they can be placed into a situation where they are not sure where exactly it is that they are to go, because some persons may think of it as it's easy as, oh, just fire the person, but it's not that easy because there's a lot of things that have to do with labor law, and then they
Mhm.
have to follow a due course, but this act doesn't state what the due course would be for them. So now they're placed in a situation where they're not exactly given a clear cut way that you can resolve this issue, because let's say it even says this: if a manager or a supervisor or an employer harasses a worker, then it can be taken to the tribunal for them to resolve the issue.
Mhm.
But who makes out that tribunal? That's the thing.
Right, right. And even with this, we can go back to culture, because in Jamaica, it is so easy for a man to be harassed and nothing comes
It's
out of
done.
it.
Yep.
Because the first thing we're talking about, we're looking at gender, right? If a male superior is to no report, yes, they can report to HR, but let's say they were to say it first to a colleague or a manager, especially if that colleague or manager is a male, and you report that a female is hitting on you or showing you some leg or some, you know, some chest or whatnot, they're gonna say, "Man, you idiot! If a kitty are show you that,
Exactly.
where you go on with your fool?" So most of the times, if a man is being harassed, it is rarely, if ever, spoken of. And again, it comes back to culture, because no man wants to hear that, hey, you're a fool,
Or they
you
don't
play a
want to be
clown.
looked down on for making a report of that,
Yeah.
because you're looked at less of a man based on the fact that you're reporting that a woman is sexually harassing you. Just as the same as we talked on, or the last podcast that I joined you on, we talked about rape. A woman reporting
Mm-hmm.
rape, it's a huge deal. But if a man goes in to report rape, they are looked at as less than, when the reality
Yep.
is they have choices just the same as women do, and they have boundaries just the same as women do. And some people don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that those boundaries are put there so no one can cross them.
Yep, for sure. I believe there's something I would want them to also insert in the set. Well, I don't they'll ever listen to me, but in the event it's there and I don't see it, for those persons who study law, this thing is written by lawyers, and part this and section with subsection. Anyways, I believe, for example, two co-workers are dating, legit dating, because this is something I have seen where persons are wrongfully accused. So you're dating and or courting or whatever, it was serious, you're in a relationship, but you did not disclose the relationship to your HR management or whatnot. And it so happens that there is no fallout. The man either broke it off, or the woman broke it off. Whatever way it went, there's a fallout. And due to the fallout, there's disagreement. I know sometimes, especially women, I can talk from a woman's perspective. Sometimes we are vengeful. Like we say, inago so. Especially if you've put everything, yeah, you put everything in it as, nah, he hurts me, I've got to hurt him back, or something like that. Just say it. All right? And you know, this person who you were courting or dating or whatnot, no reports that you sexually harassed, you know, him or her. What, I know there would be investigation, as was stated in the section, in the bill, that there would be consequences or penalties for persons who falsely accuse someone, right? They would be fined. I believe it was 500,000, up to 500,000 dollars. They didn't specify if it's Jamaican dollars, or probably I'll just find the section to confirm. But the person would be fined if it is realized that they were wrongfully accused. But what about those cases where it is investigated and the investigation does not really show the truth of what really took
The
place?
truth. That is indeed true, Roseanne. So let me give you an example of that. This is actually a true story. A young man in the US, he went to an Ivy League college, and he was in a relationship with a young woman, and he broke it off with her because he caught her cheating. This is a real story, something that actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And she decided that no, she wasn't ready to let go of him, and then she went and to the police and reported that he raped her basically.
Mm.
No, he was in his final year of college. This young lady was convincing enough that he was expelled from school. She believed the girl, everything. Like she legit had everybody fooled. He was even in court. And at the day of his sentencing, because he was going to go to prison, at the day of his sentencing, she admitted it to a police officer that she lied. Now, at this point in time, no, this had been going on for 2 years. 2 years. He was
Wow.
expelled from school. His family shunned him, everything. He was going to therapy, everything, because he was depressed, and he kept telling everyone that, listen, I didn't do this. And his entire life was destroyed, because while the fact remains that, yes, he was not convicted, the fact is he was arrested for it. And that
Yeah,
alone can destroy an entire person's life.
for sure.
No, she basically got away with a slap on the wrist. And while I understand that fining somebody is a step in the right direction, let's be realistic. There are some persons who $500,000 to
Is
them,
easy to
that's
find.
easy money.
Yeah, easy to find.
Yeah, it's easy money for them. $500,000. If you say, "Oh, give me $500,000," I say, "Oh, here it is." And
Yep,
that, while it is a step in the right direction, the reality of this is that that's not enough.
yep.
A fine isn't enough. How does a fine help with the trauma of the issue? How does
Mm-hmm.
it? It doesn't
That's
help with
true.
the trauma. And then at the end of it, if this goes to court, you're gonna have to pay for a lawyer. Five
Mm-hmm.
hundred thousand dollars more than likely isn't gonna cover
Come
your
on.
lawyer fees.
Yep, it's unrealistic. I
So
believe. Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
really it is indeed a step in the right direction, but I think we need to go a bit further by having some kind of jail time or something else attached to it. I personally think that Jamaica should have a sexual site or something like that, because there are a lot of persons who are serial sexual offenders, and because we do
Yep.
not have a way of checking this, they constantly get the opportunity of committing the same behavior
But it goes
constantly.
back. It,
So
it it goes back to what people always
no,
say, that
has to.
you have to give a man a chance. So I believe what they're saying is that they're not writing off anybody because people make mistake. But yeah, serial offenders. Trust me, I had a whole podcast set up one time about capital punishment, and then there were some things that, when I did my investigation before airing it, There were a lot of things that came into play. The fact that the judicial system is not really structured in a way where we can say yes, the person who is being convicted is indeed a felon, did actually commit this particular crime, and there are so many persons who are wrongfully accused, or they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. There are a lot of things, that goes into it, and I think probably, just probably, that would be one of the reasons they do not publicly have a website or anything, because it's all about um restructuring, or regrouping, or getting someone to realize their wrongs and make amends. And it would be so sad to see one person trying to make amends and they are punished because of six others who are not looking to change. As I said, one bad apple spoils the bunch.
That is true, Rosanna, and I do agree with you, because there are some cases where so there may be miscommunication or something like that that leads to a situation in that
Mm-hmm.
circumstance. However, I'm just saying that we need to have something put into place. And here's one
Yeah.
of the biggest problems that we have here in Jamaica. A lot of our laws were made back in the day, and they have
Yep.
not been updated since.
As not.
They haven't been updated
Mm-hmm.
since. Recently we had some judgments that came out of the woodwork where the penalty of us what we would deem as a serious crime was 50 Jamaican dollars. That was 50 Jamaican dollars. Like, a huge criminal was like out of prison because the law had not been updated,
Yeah.
and the fine for what happened was 50
Ridiculous.
Jamaican dollars. Now, to me, that's ridiculous. And then
Mm-hmm.
another thing that I find problematic with this, we don't have a set. Okay, so we have the fines, but we don't have a set rubric to say that, okay, this is what happens for each of the
Yeah,
situations.
I
So
agree.
because here's the thing, let's say we have a tribunal, right? They
Mm-hmm.
go to the tribunal, again using the scenario that I am not Christian, right, or of the
Mm-hmm.
faith of Christ, or God, right?
Yes.
And I go to a tribunal with with majority of the persons, they're of the faith of Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
That already puts me at a disadvantage to persons disbelieving me,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that we have
Bias.
cultural differences. We were raised different. My beliefs are not your beliefs, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have to be realistic. Not everyone is open minded.
Yep.
Not everyone is open minded, and because not everyone is open minded, um some persons may get away with quote unquote
Just
murder.
about anything. Yep. That's
Yeah, they
true.
will get away with just about anything, and then the reality is, so let's be fair, Rose, and sometimes nepotism is real. Not sometimes, most
It
times it
is.
is real. So if I have a friend who is on the tribunal, or I have a friend, let's say for example we're in a workplace, you're my boss, I sexually
Mm-hmm.
harass somebody because you're my boss, and the person reports me and that we're friends, you may just sweep it under the rug.
Yep.
That's the reality of the
Mm-hmm.
situation, and that's one of the reasons why persons are fearful of reporting sexual harassment.
Yep.
I
Snitches
personally
get
believe,
stitches.
my personal belief is that any sexual harassment case should be dealt with completely outside of the
Anonymously. Yep.
workplace. It should be. The reason for
Mm-hmm.
that, it reduces a chance of bias.
Yeah.
It reduces the chance of bias. So if I report it inside my workplace, the reality is I could just be reporting a sexual offense to the person's friend or
Yeah.
family member, because let's be realistic, not all family members have the same last name. So I could
Mm-hmm.
be doing that, and then no, that leads to another issue. And while it does make mention in the article that, oh, no, nobody's job should be placed in jeopardy, or they should not be discriminated against because of making a report about sexual harassment, but people are still human.
Yep.
People can be spiteful, and people can do things while it may not outrightly jeopardize my job, but you can make my life uncomfortable enough that I don't want to come to work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Of course. And I like the fact that you mentioned the fine, because the fine is either 500,000 or 1 month in prison.
1 month.
500,000 or 1 month in prison. And then not only that, it is as vague as I don't know what, because section 19, I believe it's one, two, three, four, section 4. Under section 19, you have AB, and under B, it's section 4. It says a direction that the respondent should pay to the complainant damages by way of compensation for any loss or damage suffered by reason of the conduct of the respondent. In what way are you gonna measure loss? In what way are you going to measure damage? We're not talking about a property here. We're talking about a human being. So
Definitely.
you are saying, okay, how severely? How can you measure how severe this harassment is? Is it based on if the person touched me? Is it based on if the person just sent a picture? Is it based on music? What is it based on? How are you going to measure the damage that it has caused? Right? Because
Exactly.
sexual
And then
harassment and rape is completely different. So it couldn't be that they're including rape in this. So you could not have that as a severity.
but not only that, Rosie, the fact is that, okay, so that also depends on how long it takes for the case to be tried, because
Yep.
sometimes persons will be in a situation and immediately it doesn't start impacting them until months pass and there's a trigger.
Yep.
By that time, the case is already tried, resolved, and everything. And now I'm left to pick up the pieces. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about, for
Post
example, post
traumatic
traumatic
stress.
stress disorder. That's
Mm-hmm.
real. That's real. Persons will be in the situation, shock takes over. They're not even, it's nothing to them at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Something happens in the future, small trigger,
Yep.
a hair trigger, and then immediately they're thrown back at that time, and they're now left to pick up the pieces. And I'm sorry, but $500,000 is nothing compared to emotional trauma.
That's
It
the
is
thing.
nothing.
It's you cannot. There's no compensation. I know they're trying to. I know they're putting in the law to say, hey, don't do this or else this is gonna happen. But there are certain things that it does not matter what you do, it will never bring back the person to where they were based on the emotional trauma. That
Mm,
they receive. It's a start. I applaud them for trying, because it is appalling that just now we have been independent for how long, and just now we are having a sexual harassment bill. And based on this bill, in part 1 preliminary short title, it says this act may be cited as the Sexual Harassment Act 2015. So we are currently in 2021, and it
that's
seems
6
as
years
if,
ago.
do you get what I'm saying? So how long? I know that it has to take persons, the Senate and everybody, to come together to dispute and to agree and all of that on a bill. But how many persons have suffered over these years that they're waiting to finalize this bill? And not only that, in the initial stages, it says it can be enacted by the Queen's most excellent majesty. Now, this one took me aback, you know.
Because we are no longer under the Queen's rule.
So what
So
are they not telling us? You are building a legislation. This is a bill that was passed in 2021, started
that
in
was written in,
2015. You
exactly,
understand?
but then not only that, here's the reality of it. There is a section in the article that says that repercussions cannot be filed after 12 months.
Hmm. So Oh my God, what about persons who cannot muster up the strength to come
But
forward?
not only that, Rosie. Okay, they can't muster up the strength. But what about the judicial system of Jamaica? That some persons are waiting 2, 3 years for a case to be tried. By the time it gets to court, the 12 month time frame has already passed.
Well, hopefully they look at submission date. Because I don't know what to say. Once it's submitted, probably, once it's submitted, oh hell. Once it's submitted, let's hope that because it was submitted in time, it will still be taken into account.
Yeah, but all
Because
right, let's look at it that okay, so we're looking at the submission date. It takes 2 to 3 years to fix. So I get over my emotional trauma. I'm working on it. I'm going to therapy and I'm getting through this. And then now I have to go to court to
relive it.
dredge up all that I just hit.
Yeah. To
Are you
relive.
serious? So now I'm gonna have emotional trauma times two. A person is
Yep.
now going to have to question their self-worth. All of that,
Mm-hmm.
all because of how our judicial system is set up. And while I'm not downgrading them in any way, the reality is we need to get things moving. Our
Yep.
judicial system can't be like this. It's ridiculous.
Yep. We're in the 21st century. So we
Like
need
we
we,
need
we
to do
have to
that.
do
And
better.
then here's the thing. One of the contributing factors to this is the fact that our police department doesn't communicate. They don't. I report something in Montego Bay. I go to Kingston. I can get away with murder and come right back to Hanover, and nobody knows
Probably
because they.
if you're not wanted, you're not the most wanted.
Yeah, but even if you're the most wanted, let's be realistic. Sometimes we don't even know who's on the most wanted list until
Yeah.
we see it on the news.
Yep. Yep.
That oh yeah, they caught them. By the way, this person who was on the most wanted list, they caught them. Like that's ridiculous. we
And
can't
trust
have
me.
a we can't have a justice system that doesn't communicate with
Yeah.
each other. That makes no sense. You file a report, they write it in a book, and it goes nowhere from there. I don't know if you've ever reported a car stolen.
No.
I've reported a car stolen before. So you go right to the
Yeah.
police station, you report the car, you go to report the car stolen, and they have this huge book, right? That they throw it open and they find a page that they can write something on, and then they write it on the book, and then they close the book, and then that's where it ends. Because let's be realistic, who is going to re-enter that? Because I'm not seeing a computer that they can enter it into a database. So somebody could just drive right through a police blockade, get away with my car because they don't communicate.
Yeah, it's not done real time, and I guess this is something that the government is now trying. As they said, we need to get connected, we need to get with technology, and so we have to have these databases. However, I can agree with you. The database, even if there is one, it rarely communicates because again, the level of security is not there to keep our information secure. And then not only that, we do not have the technology. So by the time a website is launched, it crashes in no
Yep.
time. In no time it crashes. But these are some very good points. We want to ensure that the bill is not too vague. We want to ensure that if someone were to read this bill, a citizen were to download this bill, to say, hey, I'm going to file a suit against my boss or my coworker or whatnot. It should be very clear so when they go to court, if it has to get to court, because the organization, the workplace can set up their own,
Tribunal.
tribunal, or as what's the word I'm looking for? They can set up their own policies as it
Mm-hmm.
relates to how they would proceed with such a situation and what investigations would be done. So we want to ensure that it's vague, it's very simple, so the population can understand, right? Because we don't want to sit here and be talking, and then somebody who does law, they're like, oh, what are these women talking about? It's there. We don't see it because we don't understand it. It's not clear for the population to understand, and we have to take into consideration our audience. We need to move forward, and the only way we can move forward is by knowing. Knowledge is key.
Yes, that is indeed true. And another problem that we have is the fact that a lot of the judicial processes are not common knowledge to the general population. So while you and I may know it because we like this is something that intrigues us and we may go research it, some persons don't know anything about the judicial process until it's time for them to report it, and then I gotta ask this friend who's gotta ask
Yep.
that friend who's gonna ask that friend. I ask a police officer. Let's hope that police officer let's hope that police officer knows what I'm supposed to do. So
Exactly.
it's real sticky with that. They have to be very clear about how people go about doing things in the judicial system.
For sure. And again, we want to know what you think. So feel free to share a comment. If it is that, we said something and you know more, please go ahead and share it with us. We want to know. We want to stay up to date because we want to ensure that if it is we are ever in a situation such as this, we know the right methods to follow. Thank you so much for watching. This is Critical Minds with Rosa. See you next time. Check it.